Hey y'all, we're back out here today to do some forging, and what I'm going to make today is a tool that I've needed a few times, but I haven't had one, so I've just had to make do. So today I'm going to go ahead and make one. Now, if you paid much attention to any of my videos, I don't buy a whole lot of steel to make stuff. I like to repurpose things. So, like I've said before, I work in a truck shop, and this is just a length off of a U-bolt. A couple weeks ago, I had to replace an axle seat on a truck, and this is a 7/8 diameter U-bolt. And U-bolts on these trucks, you probably don't know, the only way to get them off is to cut them off. They're under so much tension, they spring out if you try to unbolt them, and you will never get it back in the hole. So what I done, I cut it off down close to the threads, save this material because I know it is tough, so it should work fine for what I'm going to make. But what I'm going to make today is a bick iron, and it's basically like a tiny horn on my anvil. So I've got me a mark here, if you can see it. This section right here will be the hardy shank that will go in the hardy hole. So we'll have to forge this down square, and then this side we will taper out to a point and round it up nice. But first thing I'm going to do is see if I can heat just this section right here, and we're going to upset this a little bit because this is fairly close to the size of my hardy hole, and I want just a little bit of a shoulder to sit there so it don't go down and get stuck. So I'm going to throw this in the fire. We've got the coal forge going today, and we're going to get started. So to upset it, we're going to stand it straight up on the anvil and just hammer down on this end. This would probably be a lot easier just using a torch, because I could just heat this one little section that I want to upset, and it may end up being what I have to do. But what I'm trying to accomplish when I say upsetting, I'm compressing that steel down into itself so it will expand out. So I'll have a bigger section in one spot. So when I forge it into the hardy hole, into that shape, I'll have like a flange for it to sit there. So after a couple attempts off camera, like I said, it would probably be easier to use a torch. So we're going to swap over to the rosebud and just heat this one section and see how it goes to upset it that way. Like I said, I just wanted the upset to be in this one particular spot. Sometimes it would really pay to have an assistant because this gets kind of hard to do with just two hands. So hopefully we have enough of an upset on there. And the next thing I have to do is square up this end for our hardy hole. In case I forgot to mention, our starting specs for this piece was 9 inches long and 7/8 diameter. So now we fit in the hardy. Let's see if we can get it straightened up a little bit there. I didn't get as much of an upset as I thought I did, which is fine since I'm making tools for myself. It really don't matter. Ideally, I would like to have that with more of a lip to sit right there, but the way it is fine. If it's an issue, I can go back and weld a washer or something on it. If you're making tools for yourself, it's perfectly fine to do something like that just to get by. But if you was making something like this to sell, I would recommend doing it a little better. Now, these old anvils like this, these holes were not machined in. They're not perfectly straight on every side. So if you have an old anvil and you're making a hardy tool for it, you want to make sure that it fits in all directions. So that's good for our shank. Now what I'm going to do is turn it around and work on this end and just draw it out to a nice taper. I apologize if some of the sound is off. I have noticed with these microphones that some of the equipment, it don't like the sound of it, so it just kind of mutes it out. But anyways, I set off 2.5 inches for the hardy shank down here, and I'm going to go about 2 inches up, and the rest of this I'm going to taper out. I don't know what the makeup is of this steel, but it is tough. And 7/8 is pretty thick to forge down by hand, but we're going to muscle through it. I'm probably going to switch over to a spring swage or my cross peen to help draw this out a little faster. We're getting down there pretty close. Now we've got our taper started. I'm going to leave this back here pretty close to what it is, but from here up, I'm going to taper that on out. I'm switched over to the cross peen, and what that's going to do is allow me to draw this out in one direction. You can also do this over the horn of the anvil. You should be able to see all those dents in that. Every time you dent directionally like that, it's wanting to draw that metal out that way. This is the point of a cross peen or a straight peen. So now that we've worked it with the cross peen, use the other face of the hammer and flatten it back out. And as I flatten it back out, it's going to want to draw it out even more. Now we got a taper about where I want it. So now we're going to get another heat. And I'm going to knock these corners down and we're going to take it back to round. Now, like I said, we're going to stand this up on the points of the corners and knock them off. And start working it back to a round shape. Now I'm pretty close. I may clean that up just a little bit more, but the next step is going to be to let it cool off, and I'm going to grind it that way it's nice and smooth all the way around, and then we'll bend it over and finish it up. Now that we're cooled off, we're going to take the flat disc here on the grinder and get it cleaned up and smooth. After I got it cleaned up, I noticed some of these brake rollers I had sitting on the table. These come off of Peterbilt, and this part of the roller fit perfect around our bick, so I went ahead and welded it on. Now we've got it heating back up, and then we're going to bend it over. So go into our hardy hole with it. I'm going to stick this piece of pipe down on it. Let's see if I can do this before it cools off. Might have to go to the vise because I don't think my anvil's heavy enough for this. Well, there's your blooper for this one, so we'll heat it back up and we'll stick it in the vise and bend it over. All right, let's try this again. We'll come almost to a 90, but not quite. That way, if we're working a piece over the anvil face, we'll have just a little bit of room there underneath it. So that right there is it for our bick iron. We'll let that cool off, and I'm going to start on another little project, and we'll show you one thing it's used for. Now, for the purpose of the bick iron, I have an offset mandrel, kind of like the horn of the anvil, but smaller, that I can work all the way around something. I'm going to cheat this a little bit and use the same ending for 2 videos, but that is it for making our bick iron. And then, as you've seen in the video for the bottle opener, we use the bick iron to aid us in forging the bottle opener. So like I said, it's a good handy tool for any smith to have. It helps you work rounded areas, or if you're working something over top of it and you need to work a small radius. It's a lot smaller diameter than the horn of our anvil, so it's a good tool to have if you can make one or buy one. Good thing about being a blacksmith, you can make most of your tools if you want to. But that is it for me on both of these, and it is time to take a break. We're going to test out the bottle opener. Works perfect. Y'all have a good one.